Alan Foster blended into the Saturday crowd at the Galleria, or at least he tried to. To the staff, his worn duffel bag, overgrown beard, and frayed jacket screamed one thing: homeless. He was an eyesore in their polished world, an easy mark to accuse. Security guards Becker and Shaw began to close in, their steps heavy with authority, eager to corner him. Then came Officer Rick Jennings. Loud, smug, the enforcer of fear cloaked as law. But what none of them saw was the quiet resolve behind his tired eyes. 2 decades of service, a captain's badge earned through grit and sacrifice. They thought he was a nobody who would fold quietly. They were wrong. And in one moment, their arrogance would meet its reckoning. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The Saturday afternoon sun streamed through the Galleria's glass ceiling, casting warm patches across the marble floors. Captain Alan Foster walked with a heavy heart, his duffel bag slung over a shoulder that felt the weight of more than just the bag. It had been a year since he'd lost his wife, Sarah, and the grief still clung to him like the worn jacket he hadn't bothered to replace. Today was their anniversary, and the simple task of buying a silver locket to hold her picture felt like a pilgrimage. "Something special for you, Sarah," he murmured, his voice rough. That peaceful mission lasted exactly 6 minutes. He spotted them in the reflection of a storefront. 2 security guards maintaining what they probably thought was a subtle distance. The taller one, Becker, spoke into his radio while staring directly at him. The shorter one, Shaw, kept glancing between Alan and his partner, looking uneasy. Alan's jaw tightened. 20 years on the force and he could spot a tail a mile away. He'd been an invisible man for a year, but now, in this temple of commerce, he was suddenly the most watched person in the building. "Copy that," Becker's voice carried across the corridor. Male transient, gray jacket, duffel bag. Keeping eyes on, Alan's fingers curled into fists inside his pockets. The urge to confront them was a familiar fire. He could flash his badge, watch their smug faces crumble. But no. He was just a man trying to honor his wife. He wouldn't let them tarnish this moment. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into Prestige Jewelers. Behind the counter, a man in a crisp suit, whose name tag read Mr. Harrison, stiffened visibly. "Can I help you?" Harrison's tone was sharp, his smile a tight line of disapproval. "Just looking, thanks," Alan kept his voice steady, though his heart hammered against his ribs. He moved toward a display of silver lockets, exactly the kind he knew Sarah would have loved. Through the glass, he could see Harrison watching his every move in the mirror. Outside the store, Becker and Shaw hovered. "Those are all locked cases," Harrison announced loudly, appearing at Alan's elbow. "Items can only be handled by staff." "I understand," Alan replied, his gaze fixed on a simple, elegant locket. "When I'm ready, I'll let you know." Harrison didn't move. He shifted closer, his eyes darting between Alan and the duffel bag. "Actually," Alan said, straightening up, "I'd like to see that one. The silver locket in the center." Harrison hesitated, then slowly produced his keys. As he opened the case, Alan noticed his hands were trembling. The manager's anxiety was palpable, as if he expected Alan to snatch the whole tray and bolt. The locket was perfect, its polished surface catching the light. Alan smiled, imagining Sarah's picture inside. "I'll take it," he began. "Excuse me," Harrison cut him off sharply. "I need to see inside your bag." The boutique went quiet. Alan felt the heat of stares from other shoppers. "Excuse me," he kept his voice low, controlled. "A piece of jewelry is missing from this case." Harrison's voice grew louder as Becker and Shaw entered the store. "I saw you fiddling with your bag." Alan's hands began to shake, not from fear, but from a deep, simmering fury. "That's absolutely false. I haven't touched a thing." "Sir, please cooperate," Becker stepped forward, hand on his radio. "Empty your bag on the counter." Alan drew himself up, the familiar mantle of authority settling over him despite his appearance. I will not. You have no right to search my property without probable cause. Either show us what's in the bag, or we call the police, Harrison pressed, his face flushed. This is harassment, Allen stated firmly. You've been targeting me since I walked into this mall because of how I look. I will not submit to this. Becker moved closer, trying to use his size to intimidate him. Last chance. Open the bag. I'm not opening anything, Allen said, his voice steady. You have no right. That's it, Becker grabbed his radio. Code 10 at Prestige Jewelers. Subject refusing to comply. Requesting police backup. Other shoppers gathered, phones raised. Allen didn't move. He'd faced down armed suspects and stared down corruption in his own department. He would not be bullied by mall cops and a prejudiced manager. His duffel bag stayed firmly at his side. You're making a very big mistake, he said quietly. The tension crackled as they waited for backup. The boutique's entrance darkened as a broad-shouldered figure strode in. Officer Rick Jennings entered, his badge gleaming, his face alight with smug anticipation. Allen knew Jennings by reputation. Aggressive, quick to use force, particularly against the homeless and disenfranchised. What do we got here? Jennings boomed, his hand resting casually on his weapon. He won't let us check his bag for stolen goods, Harrison explained. Another freeloader causing trouble. Jennings focused his hostile gaze on Allen. Always the same story, isn't it? Officer, Allen began, this can be resolved easily by reviewing your security footage. Without warning, Jennings grabbed him and slammed him against the glass counter. The impact rattled the displays, and shoppers gasped. Don't tell me how to do my job, he snarled. Hands behind your back. Now. This is excessive force, Allen declared loudly. I have rights, and you are violating them. Rights? Jennings laughed, yanking his arms back roughly. You've got the right to shut up while I add resisting arrest to your charges. The handcuffs clicked shut, unnecessarily tight. Jennings spun him around and marched him toward the mall corridor. Shoppers pressed against storefronts, phones high, capturing the spectacle of a man who looked homeless being paraded out in handcuffs. Allen held his head high, even as his shoulders screamed from the awkward angle. You're making a scene for nothing, Jennings announced loudly to the crowd. Should have just cooperated. They reached the mall's side exit where Jennings's patrol car waited. Before this goes any further, Allen said clearly, I think you should know something, Officer Jennings. Save it for booking, he snapped. I'm Captain Allen Foster, 12th Precinct, his voice carried across the parking lot. My badge is in my wallet, in my back pocket. Which you would have known if you'd bothered to ask for identification before assaulting me. The crowd's murmuring grew louder. Jennings's face flickered with uncertainty before hardening into a sneer. Sure you are, he scoffed. And I'm the police commissioner. Check my pocket, Allen insisted. Jennings hesitated, then roughly patted his pocket. His hand froze as it felt the familiar shape of a wallet and badge. Slowly, he withdrew it, the gold shield catching the sunlight. This is fake, he declared, but his voice had lost its authority. Impersonating an officer. That's another charge. The crowd's reaction was immediate. He's a captain, someone called out. He arrested a police captain for shopping. The phones kept recording, documenting every second of Jennings's obvious panic. I suggest you remove these handcuffs, Allen said quietly. Before you dig yourself any deeper. This badge could be fake, Jennings insisted, but his hands were shaking. Instead of backing down, he grabbed Allen's arm again, trying to force him into the car. You're just making it worse for yourself. Resisting arrest, interfering. The crowd's volume increased, their outrage palpable. Let him go, someone shouted. Allen stood his ground. Every second of this is being recorded, officer. Every abuse of power. Are you sure you want to continue? A police cruiser pulled into the lot, its lights flashing. Sergeant Maria Sanchez stepped out, her face carefully neutral. She'd worked under Alan for years, knew his integrity, and had worried about him since his wife's death. "Jennings," she called out, her tone casual. "Want to tell me why you've got Captain Foster in cuffs?" Jennings's grip on Alan's arm finally loosened. "Sergeant, I was responding to a theft call." He claimed to be a captain. "He is Captain Foster," Sanchez interrupted. "The badge you're holding is real." The crowd had gone quiet, watching. Finally, with trembling hands, Jennings produced his keys and removed the handcuffs. Alan rubbed his wrists, red marks already forming. The mall's PR director rushed out, offering apologies. "Unfortunate incident." Alan repeated, his voice sharp. "Is that what we're calling institutional prejudice and police brutality now?" As the PR team scrambled, Sanchez moved closer to Alan. "You should know," she said in a low voice, "Jennings was on his radio before I got here. He's already filed his report. Claiming you resisted and struck him." Alan felt a fresh wave of anger. He'd seen it 100 times. False reports used to justify excessive force. "He doesn't know who he's dealing with," he told Sanchez. That night, an official email arrived. An internal affairs investigation had been opened into him. According to Jennings's report, Alan had been combative and aggressive. It painted him as an unhinged transient, a danger to the public. The system was already closing ranks to protect its own. They thought they could bury him with lies. They had no idea the war they had just started. A few days later, Alan sat with Sergeant Sanchez in a quiet diner, a manila folder between them. "The report is designed to trigger an IA investigation," she said grimly. "Jennings is claiming assault on an officer. He's got the mall security guards backing his story." "But there are videos, Maria," Alan protested. "Witnesses saw everything. Videos can be edited. Witnesses can be intimidated," she countered. "They'll say the footage is incomplete. They'll focus on your appearance, your emotional state. They'll paint you as unstable." Her eyes softened. "Alan, we both know how the system treats people who make waves, especially when they challenge the official narrative. So I'm supposed to let them destroy my reputation? Everything I worked for?" "No," Sanchez said firmly. "We fight smart. And I don't think this is just about you." She opened the folder, spreading documents across the table. "In the past year, I've tracked dozens of arrests at or near that mall. Almost all homeless or low-income individuals. All charged with resisting arrest or disorderly conduct after they complained about harassment." Alan leaned over the papers. "Same officers. Jennings, Martinez, Cooper. The charges always come after the complaints. It's a pattern of retaliation." "It's worse," Sanchez said, pointing to a spreadsheet. "Nearly all of them end in plea deals that include mandatory probation through a private contractor called Second Chance Services." "Private probation?" Alan's eyebrows rose. "It's a growing business. But look at the fees. Monthly supervision, drug testing, electronic monitoring. People end up paying thousands, trapped in a debtor's prison. If they can't pay, they violate probation and go back to jail." The pieces began to click into place. It was an organized scheme. That night, Alan received a text from an unknown number. "Back off, Captain. You don't know what you're stepping into." They thought they could scare him. They didn't know the man they were dealing with. The next day, Alan met Daniel Price, a young, hungry reporter for the City Herald. "I've been investigating Second Chance Services for months," Daniel said, his eyes blazing. "I have bank records, tax documents that don't add up, but I keep hitting walls. Then I saw the video of your arrest." Together, they connected with a coalition of homeless advocates who had been documenting the abuse for years. They had sworn affidavits, witness statements, and medical records from people Jennings had roughed up. The evidence was overwhelming. The Galleria's security, paid by a corporation called Sterling Holdings, targeted the vulnerable. Local police, led by Jennings, made arrests on false charges. And Sterling Holdings, which owned the mall, also owned Second Chance Services, profiting from the probation fees. That night, Alan found his apartment door vandalized. Scrawled in red paint were the words, "Get back to the gutter." The threat was clear. He confided in his superior and old friend, Lieutenant Grant Wallace, showing him the evidence they'd compiled. Wallace promised to help, to put out feelers quietly. An hour later, Alan found a new message keyed into his car: "Stay quiet, Captain." Only someone inside the department would know his rank. Only someone he'd just spoken to could have acted so fast. The betrayal cut deeper than any insult. Wallace was part of it. Just when all seemed lost, Daniel Price came through. A source inside Sterling Holdings had leaked a trove of documents, internal memos detailing the entire scheme. It laid out explicit instructions for security to target at-risk individuals, to maximize downstream revenue opportunities, through their probation subsidiary. It was the smoking gun. But their victory was short-lived. That night, Daniel was brutally attacked leaving his office, his laptop stolen, the evidence presumably gone. Lying in a hospital bed, bruised but defiant, Daniel revealed his secret weapon. He was sloppy, he told Alan. My attacker had a badge. And when he stole my phone, he didn't know about my security software. The moment he turned it on, it mirrored his entire phone to my cloud. The data was a bombshell. It was Jennings's partner, Martinez. His phone contained everything: copies of the stolen memos, bank statements showing kickbacks to a city judge, and emails between Jennings and the mall's CEO discussing arrest quotas. It was the entire conspiracy, laid bare. The city council meeting was packed. The unedited video of Alan's arrest, showing Jennings setting him up with the store manager moments before he entered, had been released an hour prior and had already gone viral. Alan, dressed in a sharp suit, walked to the podium. "My name is Captain Alan Foster," he began, his voice ringing with authority. He laid out the entire criminal enterprise, document by document. The financial records, the emails, the proof of a system designed to prey on the city's most vulnerable for profit. "That's enough." Jennings exploded, storming the podium. "You're under arrest." But before he could reach Alan, 2 uniformed officers stepped into his path. Then 2 more. They were officers Alan had trained, officers who respected him. They formed a protective line. "Stand down, Jennings," one said firmly. The chamber erupted. The state attorney, who had been sitting in the back, strode forward and took the evidence from Alan. Investigators flooded the room, securing exits. Jennings was cuffed, his face a mask of disbelief. The mall's CEO and several council members were detained. The system, so confident in its power, crumbled in the light of truth. 3 days later, Alan Foster walked through the Galleria. He was clean-shaven, wearing a new suit, the picture of dignity. The mall was quiet, many stores shuttered pending investigation. People recognized him. They stopped him, shook his hand, and thanked him. An elderly man, whose grandson had been trapped in the scheme, embraced him with tears in his eyes. He finally returned to Prestige Jewelers. The new staff treated him with reverence. He bought the simple silver locket he had come for weeks ago. Leaving the mall, he drove to the cemetery. The late afternoon sun cast a warm glow on the polished stone of his wife's grave. He opened the locket and carefully placed her small picture inside, his hand steady for the first time in a year. "I did it, Sarah," he whispered, the silver cool against his skin. "I stood up. For you, and for them." The fight wasn't over, but a major battle had been won. Justice, for once, had been served.